Hey guys, it's James here from eBassGuitar, and in today's video I'm talking about in-ear monitors for bass guitar and everything you need to get started using them. So if you're interested in adding them to your bass rig and discovering the benefits, make sure you check out this video all the way to the end. Hey guys, it's James here from eBassGuitar, and in today's video I want to talk all about in-ear monitors for bass guitar. So I've been getting a bunch of questions recently over at basslabgroup.com, which is eBassGuitar's Facebook group, about in-ear monitors and what the benefits are of them for bass guitar. So I thought I'd make a video telling you everything you need to know to get started using this incredible technology. As you might have guessed by that statement, I'm quite a fan of in-ears. I've been using them now for probably 16 or 17 years, so I'm quite experienced about the pros and cons of them. So what I thought I'd do is I'd share you 5 tips about how to get going with in-ear monitors, and then 2 bonus tips which are very, very specific to me. But before we dig into the tips, there is a free PDF that comes with this lesson. It's a checklist which is going to check off everything that you need to know to get started with in-ear monitors, but also give you a resource list of the best manufacturers out there, because there are now quite a few on the market to check out. So make sure you click the link in the description below to get going and get that free PDF checklist. So tip number 1 is be patient. The reason for this is in-ear monitors are a very, very different sound to working through an amplifier system like this, and it can often take players a little bit of time to get used to it. I think it probably took me 2 or 3 months of using them to really get super comfortable. But the benefits of using in-ear monitors are a couple major ones. Firstly, it is clarity, because you're getting everything pumped into your ears in real sort of high definition, so you can really hear everything. So you can hear exactly what the keyboard player is playing or exactly what the guitarist is doing, and you can really customize what you hear. You end up with so much more control over the sound. The second area is it actually reduces the volume too. So if you're looking to look after your hearing a bit, the in-ear monitors can be a great solution to that. So tip number 2 is use both headphones. There is this tendency when people are starting out experimenting with in-ears just to use one, and that is fraught with problems. The real benefit you get for the bass guitar is when you use 2 and you create a seal in there, because that's what allows the bass to really sound good. When you start popping one out or breaking that seal, that first thing to go is the low end. So it really isn't that much of a benefit to us bass guitar players to only use one. But there is another phenomena going on at the same time, is in-ear monitors provide hearing protection. These in-ear monitors here, which are silicone based, they're made out of silicone, and they are effectively earplugs when you put them in and create that seal. On average, they would take down 25 decibels, which is quite a considerable amount. So you've got to imagine that you popped one out here, you've just got this one in like that. You've got the band blaring away very loudly here. To compensate, you have to turn this headphone up. And what can happen is 2 things. First of all, you can cause damage to the headphone and start blowing the little drivers or speakers which are inside the headphone. But the second thing that can happen is you can start really damaging your hearing by having to have these blaringly loud directly on your eardrums. So I really encourage you, when you're in those early phases of using in-ear monitors, to persevere using 2. The benefits will really come from using 2 headphones. So tip number 3 is buy the very best headphones that you can afford. These are ACS custom molded headphones which are made to the shape of my ear, and they sound fantastic. They probably cost in the region of $600 to $800, but they're worth every penny of it for this particular reason. One thing that I've seen time and time again is musicians, bass players will spend, I don't know, maybe $2,000, $3,000 on a really great bass, and then something similar on an amp, etc. But when it comes to the headphones, they will scrimp and use something really, really cheap. And the reason I think we buy good equipment and expensive equipment is to help ourselves feel inspired. We want to feel motivated when we pick up the bass guitar. And really, getting that great sound 50% of the time is for us. At the end of the day, I don't think your average singer really appreciates if you have that extra sort of 3-band EQ preamp on there, which costs another $200 or $300, or the inlays on your bass. It doesn't matter. It's just all about having a good sound to them. But that extra high end really doesn't matter to everybody else, but it does matter to us. So when we're looking to get that great sound, we want that sound replicated in our headphones. So going out and buying $30 headphones really is going to give you a very, very poor experience. So I would, any day of the week, if you're using in-ears a lot of the time, buy a more inexpensive cabinet, but much more expensive headphones so they feel good and inspired to us. But also there is another phenomena going on there. Cheap headphones generally sound good when you're listening to your iPod and that kind of thing because the music is compressed to a dynamic level like that. But when we're dealing with live instruments, the dynamic range is so much greater. Like these are triple driver headphones, so they sound really, really good. So you can go all the way up to 8 drivers and stuff like that in headphones, which is really, really great. But the thing that they do really well is represent the whole of the dynamic frequency range of the instruments really, really well. So when you use inexpensive headphones, you start to lose so much of the detail in the sound, so it becomes a less rewarding experience. So tip number 3 is buy the very best headphones that you can afford in your budget. Tip number 4 is keep your mix simple and work with the monitor or sound engineer. So what I mean by mix, the mix is the relative blend of each instrument in your particular headphones. So how I would start off is put the bass up to a comfortable level so you can hear it well and it sounds good. Then start adding in the drums and getting them to another comfortable level. And you want to have the drums at a nice level so you can lock in rhythmically. Then just gradually add everything else and have those sitting further back in the mix. What you don't want to do is get the other instruments too loud because that is what can clutter the mix and you can start to lose clarity, and also everything just starts to get louder and louder. A friend of mine said many years ago that he keeps the mix very simple, and if he wants to pick out an instrument, he just listens harder to that particular instrument rather than playing around with the mix. But it's really important to get the mix good because that is the thing that inspires us. So I encourage you to form a good relationship with your sound engineer and ask them to change things and experiment as needed. Sometimes people can feel uncomfortable keeping going back and forth, but really a sound guy's job is to get your mix sounding good, so there should be no problem asking them to change things. Also, you might end up with your own personal mixer too. This can be really good, often on the iPad now that people are doing that, which is really, really good, or you might have a little console in front of you. So just always feel free to experiment and keep changing your sound if something isn't right within the mix. Tip number 5 is use an amplifier in conjunction with your in-ear monitors. One of the things that people struggle with when they're trying to get used to in-ears is they feel very, very clinical. But getting some air moving and the stage vibrating can be really good to kind of fill in that sensation. I personally love having the floor moving a little bit. But the other thing it does is it fills in the bottom end too. And you will hear that real low end without the in-ear monitors. So what that means is you don't have to put so much bass into the in-ear monitors. So it gives you a much, much fuller sound if you can use the amp too. But one caveat, always work with the sound engineer. If they want the volume lower on stage, turn it down, because ultimately it will always sound better out front. Because another benefit of in-ear monitors is if every musician is on them, it will bring the relative stage volume down so much, which means you get a much, much cleaner and better sound out front, which is why I'm a fan. You can get the out front sounding really good, and then you can have a really great experience and such great clarity from the headphones. And really, for me, I tend to enjoy the gig so much more when I can hear each musician clearly. If you end up in the situation where an amp is not possible, good in-ear monitors, you can use them just by themselves. But what I tend to do is use an active bass and add in a few decibels of bass to fill in that bottom end. But my preferred method is to always use an amp in combination with the in-ear monitors. So I'm just going to finish this video off with 2 bonus tips. These are bonus tips because they're a little bit more particular to me, and little tricks that I like to do to improve my experience using in-ear monitors. So bonus tip number 1 is use a preamp DI, like this little one here, which is a tone hammer by Aguilar. I love the sound of this. What often happens is monitor engineers or sound engineers will DI, so they will take the sound bass, plug it into a DI box, then the other side of the DI box goes into the amplifier. And that's when you can start losing control. And what I like to do is have a little bit of control, because often it only needs a tiny bit of bass or maybe an extra couple of dBs of gain to make that difference in your mix. And just being able to go to it and tweak and adjust the sound can be really, really powerful. Often sound engineers like to use their DI boxes, which is kind of fair enough, but with this, it's specifically designed for bass, and also it sounds really, really good too. So there's a good argument for using your own DI boxes on gigs and having that extra little bit of control. But I advise you, don't go overboard, don't go wildly changing the level, because that would just annoy the sound engineer. Just tweak a little bit, because often the little 1 decibel or 2 decibel change in a volume level in in-ears can make a lot of difference to the experience you get. So that is bonus tip number 1, is carry your own preamp with you, because that can make a massive difference. So bonus tip number 2 is carry your own headphone amp. So to every gig now, I carry this little Behringer headphone amp here. It's about 50 bucks, and I really, really like it. They're more expensive ones by sure, but this does the job as an inexpensive thing to keep in your gig bag. Now, the reason I like doing that is because something I've noticed in the past 2 or 3 years is the quality of sound equipment and the functionality is just gone through the roof. When I first started working with in-ear monitors, and about 10 plus years ago, the sound desk that we had to buy was probably the best part of $10,000 for our band now. That was a Yamaha LS9. I can't remember the exact figures, but I reckon it was something around there. But now you can pick up a Behringer X32, for instance, which has crazy functionality in it for probably $3,000 or thereabouts. So what I've seen on gigs is the functionality of the equipment is just getting better and better. It's getting smaller and lighter as well. So sometimes if you end up in a duff room, for instance, maybe it's a room which has got lots of hard walls in there, which can be very, very traditionally difficult for bands to work in. You can actually plug in your own monitor mix if there is a sound guy there. You can actually choose to go on in-ears yourself, and this is something I've done a bunch of times if I can't work with the sound, or I'm finding it difficult to work with the sound in the room. If you've got a duff room with lots of hard surfaces, what happens is, or can happen, is people turn up one by one. So if I might turn up my volume a little bit, then to hear myself, then the guitarist might do the same thing again, and then that means the drummer plays a little bit louder, and what happens is the volume just creeps up and up and up. And bearing in mind this is a bad sounding room to begin with, it can just get more louder and more indistinct, because as the volume gets louder, more often than not it becomes harder to hear yourself. So by carrying a little preamp like that and going to the sound guy, can I plug this in and use in-ears? Often I can end up having a really good gig in a bad room. So I encourage you to maybe spend 50 bucks on a little preamp like that and a decent set of headphones. Then you've always got the option of working on in-ears on a gig if the room isn't so good or you just prefer using that particular system. But also, I've never done this, but you could actually plug out the back of the amp, so you maybe could put a pair of headphones in there and just hear the bass through. It's not a sound I particularly like, but I know people who have done that before. So there are lots of different possibilities if you carry your own little in-ear monitor rig around with you. So guys, that's the end of today's video. If you have any questions for me on this subject, please do comment below. I'll be very happy to input my advice and any thoughts I have there. If you want to grab the free checklist which comes with this lesson, please click the link in the description below. And if you've liked this video, please do give it a like and share on social. I've been James from eBassGuitar, and I'll catch you next time.